Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Jason Cohen, and I'll be your host for today. I'm also joined by my co-hosts, Ryan Heffernan and Ashley Martin. A few reminders before we start. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during the presentation and are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you are using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/securitywebinars. Closed captions in several languages are available during the live broadcast. You can enable them by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. Feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window by clicking on the Ask a Question button. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. If you see a question you would like to be verbalized at the end of the webinar, please give it a thumbs up, and the question with the most likes will be prioritized during Q&A. We often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Microsoft Defender for Cloud forum at aka.ms/mdc community. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. You can do so at aka.ms/securitywebinar-feedback. And by the way, all the links that I'm announcing will be shared with you on the chat or the live event Q&A window. I would also like to invite you to join our public community by visiting aka.ms/securitycommunity. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews at aka.ms/prseccom, request features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Serok Jeppa will take us through NextGen multi-cloud CSPM in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, or as a program manager with the Microsoft Defender for Cloud team. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to her. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen real quick. So as Jason said, I'm a product manager in Defender for Cloud, and here today to talk about our new solution for multi-cloud in AWS for posture management. So during this talk, we'll also ask you a few questions. We'd love to have your inputs on the roadmap and on the features that we're planning ahead. So if you'd like, please log into the Install Everywhere link or using the QR code. So we can hear your opinions about what we're building. So if someone could please also paste this in the chat window, so attendees could log in as well after we proceed. And let's see if some of you succeeded in logging in and see where you're coming from in the world. So I'm here in Israel. So good morning, very early morning for some of you, I see. Good evening for others. Great, so I see this is working. We have nice coverage from Europe and America. So let's see a bit about what your roles are in your organization. I'm curious to see, who we have here today. Maybe other. If it's other, feel free to type in the chat window what other means. Great. So curious to see what other means later, but I see we have, I think what we will discuss will be hopefully useful to you. So when we are looking at the cloud and how do we protect it, we are aware that multi-cloud has become the the reality for many organizations, some for strategic reasons, some for practical reasons. There are benefits to each cloud, and we want to be able to develop our security posture management in a way that grows with your needs and your needs to protect each cloud in the specific ways it should be protected, and yet be able to centralize and manage and be able to govern all the security data from one centralized location. So as we can see, attacks on the cloud are here to stay pretty much, and we need to do our best in order to help you with gaining visibility and governing your data. So what do we do in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which is the new name for Azure Security Center? We have two areas. We have the area for security posture management, where we try to surface those cloud misconfigurations, surface secure score, which we'll see soon, automate response to any misconfigurations, and help try as much as we can decrease the attack surface before any attacks happen, so we can better the security for our users. We have, of course, the side for threat protection, which we have also expanded recently for cross-cloud support. In this webinar, we will be focusing on the cloud security posture management side, but I know that there are other webinars coming up on the protection side, so stay tuned for those if you have those needs as well. So for those of you that are familiar with our previous implementation for multi-cloud, we previously wanted to enable users to use those native cloud security tools in each cloud and integrate the data from those solutions into Security Center to have centralized visibility and automating processes from one central location. So we have updated this implementation into the new connector, which we have recently launched at Ignite 2 weeks ago. For AWS, we currently, the new connector leverages an agentless design for CSPM. So we don't rely on the native security tools anymore. We generate those recommendations in Defender for Cloud, and we rely on the native APIs with read-only access in order to do that. And we will soon discuss exactly how we do that. So we will see the recommendation coverage, resource coverage soon. And a bit about the new onboarding. So we have created ways to onboard either a single account or a management account in an easy and faster way, and creating connector per each account, which we will connect to Defender for Cloud, and to be able to start scanning those resources. We will soon see a demo of how this happens. With this integration, as I said, we request a read-only access to the environment, retrieve the JSON configuration for each resource periodically. We refresh the data every 6 hours, and we retrieve all those JSON configurations into our Custo database or Azure Data Explorer. Our new multi-cloud assessments are Custo queries. So Custo, for those of you who are not working with it yet, it's very similar to SQL. Querying language, which enables us to create complex queries using different data types, joining between different data types, for example, and also customizing recommendations. So out of the box, when connecting this solution, you'll be able to get over 160 security recommendations covering more than 30 resource types from AWS. And as I said, you'll be able to customize those recommendations as well. So perhaps you have your own compliance standards that you track in your organization, or your specific security tools that you deploy and track. So you'll be able to either take any of our built-in recommendations and customize them, or create your own customized queries and include them in Defender for Cloud, as well as creating your own compliance benchmarks and integrating into them any of the built-in or your custom assessments. So all of this data, once you onboard to Security Center, will integrate into all of our existing features. So for example, if you're tracking your secure score across the Azure environment, you'll be able to extend that into other environments as well. If we're looking at compliance assessment and management, once onboarding, you will get 3 out-of-the-box regulatory compliance standards. We currently cover AWS CIS, PCI, and AWS Foundational Security Best Practices. So you'll be able to see them in our regulatory compliance dashboard. And all of the data is integrated into our exporting scenarios, for example. So if you download the compliance report, the data points on AWS will be integrated into that as well. The data will appear also in the inventory view. So where you manage your Azure resources, now you'll be able to manage the AWS resources, query them using Azure Resource Graph, exporting the results into a CSV, for example. We also have a new integration with Azure Purview for sensitive data scans. So we wanted to be able to extend this into AWS as well, with sensitive data scanning and the classification of sensitive data for AWS S3 buckets and RDS, which will be integrated in Defender for Cloud as well. So these data points will also be available in workflow automation, for example. So if you until now used to create logic apps, for example, in order to trigger sending an email to the resource owners with the non-compliant recommendations, for example, you'll be able to extend that into AWS resources as well. So let's quickly have a look on how it all looks in the system. So here is Defender for Cloud. Here we can see our recommendations grid. You'll be able to see that alongside Azure recommendations, we now can see new AWS recommendations. They're easily identified as they're orange, but also we do have a filter to help you distinguish between them as well. If you have previously used the AWS connector and would like to onboard with the new connector, then please note that you can use both at the same time. It's a new connector and a new onboarding method, so no worries about that. And if you'd like to distinguish between the recommendations coming from the Classic connector to the new connector in the process of evaluating it, then we have here the distinction between AWS Classic and AWS Preview, which is the new integration. And using this filter, you'll be able to see only AWS recommendations, for example, on the environment, and also, of course, explore them, see the remediation steps, look at your non-compliant resources. You can trigger a logic app, for example, pair those recommendations. In inventory, as we saw before, the recommendations, you'll be able to explore your multi-cloud resources. So again, you can filter only for those AWS resources. You can filter by recommendation type, for example. If you'd like to discover a specific set of non-compliant resources, then you can further explore this data in Azure Resource Graph, for example. This will open the query, which runs on the background of what we show in the UI. Here you can customize this according to your needs. If you use any of our workbooks, by the way, then the data from AWS resources will be surfaced there as well. You'll be able to see here the new compliance benchmarks. So they will be here with the preview notation in the compliance dashboard. So here you'll be able to see all those AWS resources mapped to the compliance control. So let's have a look at the new onboarding. It's a good time to mention as well that our pricing and settings experience has been updated to the new environment settings. Here you'll be able to see the same hierarchy tree, but now it contains AWS as well, and the hierarchy of those accounts that you've already onboarded. If you wish to have a look at any of all the connectors that you created, then please note that there is a banner here that will take you back to that experience as well. So when we onboard new accounts, we simply select that option to onboard accounts. We'll give a connector a name. And you'll note that we have an option to either onboard a single account or onboard a management account. When we onboard a management account, we will need the access to the management account, so access at the management account level. And we'll create a connector for the management account and connectors per each account that we discover under this hierarchy. You can exclude accounts from this hierarchy if you'd like. For example, if you have some test accounts that you don't want in this connection, you'll need to give us the account ID. And move forward. Here you'll be able to select the plans that you want to enable on the scope. Each plan will require a different access role from us to authenticate to your environment. The CSPM plan requires a read-only access to the environment. We call the native cloud APIs, retrieve the data into our own database, which is managed by Defender for Cloud, and also the costs are on Defender for Cloud. And that's how we authenticate to retrieve the data. For the Defender plans for servers and for containers, we leverage the Azure Arc agent. So if you'd like that, you can, of course, configure this with auto-provisioning as well to streamline those agents that you want installed on your machines without needing to discover any new EC2s and remember to deploy the agents on them. So once you select the plans, the next phase would be to configure access on AWS side. The access roles, which you selected from the plans from the previous window, will be implanted into this CloudFormation template that you can download. And you'll need to, the next step would be to authenticate to the account you want onboarded in AWS. So authenticate here, it would take you to the sign-in and already to deploy this stack for the cloud with the cloud formation template. So just upload the cloud formation template, give it a stack set name, and that's pretty much it. Next, give it tags if you manage it by tags in your organization. And that will be all the steps required on AWS side. On our side, if you didn't change the role ARN given on AWS side, then no further actions needed here. And you can go ahead and generate the connector. Once you've generated the connector, our discovery service will start running. It will query the APIs, create a connector per each account in the hierarchy or per the single account you've onboarded, and the discovery service will start running to generate recommendations. Excuse me 1 minute. You'll be able to see new recommendations surface in Security Center a few hours after you've created the connection. If after onboarding, you'd like to enable more plans, you'd like to offboard some plans, then you can do this through this view, which I navigated through the new environment settings blade. So I can select the connector and then edit the roles I gave on the account. I will need to then update the stack I created in AWS. And that way you can continue using an existing connector, but editing what the security value on that connector will be. So for every new account onboarded, you'll be able to see here some regulatory compliance standards which come out of the box. For example, we can have a look at this one. We'll see the list of assessments that will run on the environment. Sorry, pretty dry here in Israel right now. We can also assign new standards on the on the scope of the account. So for example, currently I don't have here the AWS PCI, but I can assign this new standard and it will run on this scope. I can also create new standards and include some new recommendations there, either custom or built-in. And I can also create those custom assessments. So how we do that is we have this nice new context blade here. You can add your the name for the recommendation, severity, a description. Maybe you have a remediation description that you'd like the resource owners to receive. You can select which standards you want this recommendation added to. The standards that you select will define the scope on which the assessment will run and evaluate. You can add new custom assessments into custom standards. So how do we create and customize the custom query? Is we've created a nice, cool, I hope cool, playground in Azure Data Explorer. So you'll need to click on that link to get access into this new environment. You'll be able to see here the data structure that we receive and create and play with the data, play with those resource configurations. So let's have a look at, this is an example of an assessment, but let's have a look on how the data is structured before we have a look at the assessment itself. So what we do is you can have here the timestamp of when we refresh the data. You have some additional properties, and in the record field, you'll be able to see exactly the API structure, the JSON that we retrieved from the native cloud API. So any properties that are supported in the native cloud, you will be able to include in those custom recommendations. You'll be able, of course, to join between different resource types and create your own customized recommendations. So this is one example for a recommendation that will help us see which VMs, which EC2s on the environment have been stopped working. So they've been stopped and not working for over 30 days. So some stale machines on the environment. So here we can see and explore this data and the health state. Just to note, this is an environment with mock data, so you can play with the structure of the resources and create the assessments that you would like.
Hey, Or,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but could you zoom in a little? We have a couple requests from the audience.
This one zooms in. This one zoomed a lot in. Hope this is better.
Thank you.
This. So yeah, so I hope this is a bit more clear here. So we have here some fields we have by default. This is the default schema for any resource type that we retrieve. In the record field, we will have the entire JSON configuration. We can see it here as we retrieve it from the native cloud. Work with me. Yeah. I hope it's fairly visible. So it's the JSON configuration as we retrieve it from the native cloud. And as you can see, we have extended here the health state for each EC2 discovered. So I can then take this creation and paste it here into the query window in order to create this new custom recommendation. Of course, I'll need to give it a name as well. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation. So I'd love to hear a bit about your thoughts. We now support AWS. We'd love to know which other clouds you use and would like to onboard to this type of solution for multi-cloud CSPM support. I hope this is working. Ooh. Oracle. So either all of you want it or there's a delay. I'll give it a few more seconds so we can see which ones are your favorites. I always say we should have some background music for those polls. Great. Thank you for that. So moving forward to the next question. We've reached our interactive phase for this webinar. Okay, so now we support CIS, PCI, and best practices. I'm curious to see what you track in your organization. If it's other than if you feel comfortable sharing, then we'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat window. Interesting. Good. So Nistia, we assumed Thank you. So when you create custom recommendations, curious to know if you would be comfortable using Cousteau queries. We feel that would be very flexible language. It's also commonly used across Azure. And we feel it would help, creating very flexible recommendations governing cross-resource types. But perhaps you're looking for a simplified query creator as well. So thank you for the answers. We'll move on to the next question. So we do consider, I did show you the remediation. We do have remediation logic available for AWS recommendations. They are currently in Python format, and you can select the resources that you'd like to remediate, download the recommendation logic as you'll be able to view it as you can for the quick fix logic available for Azure. And you'll be able to select the resources you want to remediate, download the script, and then run it locally. So we're curious to know if you like Python, if you need other forms of remediation logic languages. So thank you. Interesting to know. And also regarding remediation, this is an interesting one. I assume you remediate resources today in the organization. So how do you do it? Is it manually? Does your team need to do it yourselves? Do you automate it? If you automate it, how do you automate it? Or how would you like to automate it? Manually. So I see a lot of you use manual, fix. Some use automation as well. Some I see the quick fix option. Interesting. Thank you. So we've gotten to our Q&A phase. So feel free to type in A or any question that you'd like to surface. So maybe if we have some questions from the chat window, we can talk about them now as well.
Sure, our team has been great at answering all the questions.
Awesome.
I'll bring up maybe one or two that's been answered that you could potentially elaborate on. First one is, I'm extremely interested in using the new AWS connector for my AWS accounts in my company. However, the main question I have is around governance. When I have an issue with remediating any of the recommendations for AWS and Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and I need to open a support case for any of them, where should I open the support case, the AWS side or on the Azure side?
Great question. So it depends on where you're experiencing troubles with. So if it's with the recommendation itself and how you're going to remediate it, then open it on our side. We have a great team of support and security researchers that have created those remediation logics that would love to help. If it's questions on the, how stuff function on AWS side or any malfunctions on that side, then it would be to AWS support.
Great, thank you.
Okay, sorry, trying to scroll.
I guess we can go through some of the ones here.
Yeah.
How's security and transferring data from the other cloud?
Cool. So we authenticate as an AAD app to the other cloud. We get the access roles for, you create access roles for us on AWS side. We authenticate with our app ID and our tenant to the to AWS. All of the data is of course encrypted. Yes. Is the AWS price less than Security Hub price? So I'm not sure what is the AWS price, but the new integration doesn't require enabling a Security Hub anymore or enabling any security tools on AWS side. During the preview, the cost for CSPM is free, and we will update as soon as we have the exact business model on this one. No, I'm sorry. I keep doing that. Good. So, are there any plans to improve BI reporting? So, we do have a few options for reporting. I hope you're familiar with the workbooks that we have out of the box in Security Center. We have a workbook to track recommendations, compliance over time, secure score over time, and I do know that you know in Defender for Cloud, you have the compliance state of the current state of your estate. If you'd like to have that overtime trend, then you can use the continuous export option and enable it on any scope. Also, multi-cloud data will be included in the export ability. And recently at Ignite, we also announced another capability in continuous export, which is the snapshot export option. So up until now, once you enable continuous export, we continuously export any new updates to the compliance state of the recommendations or other data types from Security Center into either an event hub or log analytics workspace. And with the new snapshot capability, you'll be able to receive weekly snapshots of the data types that you choose into the destination that you choose. So that greatly helped us with being able to provide overtime compliance reporting. And it's also integrated into the built-in workbooks, for example, which you can deploy and customize if you'd like. And we read the data from Log Analytics Workspace, from Azure Resource Graph, from additional places as well, and consolidate it there. So if you haven't checked that out, then I think it's a cool place to go. And I hope I got that question right as you meant it. When the GCP connector will be available, I can share that we are working on it. We're not, we're definitely working on it with a very large team here, and it should be available in the near future. How long will Microsoft keep the name Azure Defender before marketing it? A year. If you have new name ideas, feel free to suggest. I'm happy to hear this looks great. Have there been any comparisons run against third-party solutions like Palo Alto or Checkpoint? Yes, there have. I assume it could be indeed useful for us to include those in some maybe docs. I'm not sure in what regard you mean those comparisons, but yes, we are aware of the competitor capabilities. They have very nice and robust solutions. And we feel that we've created a variety of features that users have been asking for a while, including the native recommendations generated out of the box without a dependency on a different solution, including recommendation customization. We're going into the remediation areas as well, and integrating all of that into one single pane of glass. We feel will answer many of the needs that we've heard from users. How about exception management and risk prioritization? So exception, so I hope I get this right. If you mean by exception, exemption, for example, for specific resources from a recommendation for a period of time, where users say, I need this exempted until I fix it, or this is not relevant for me, I need an exemption from this organizational policy, then yes, we do support it. Currently through the management APIs we've exposed, and of course a more robust coverage in the UI is being worked on as well. Try to catch it. Oh, I caught it for a minute. I'm sorry. Trying to move it. I need to catch it and not release. This is frustrating.
Maybe try going back to a different slide.
No, now we're just experiencing what we saw before. Now we'll need to see it all appear again. Okay. Are there some questions from the chat maybe in the meantime once we
all the ones in the
let
chat
it appear?
Answered. Let me see if I can pull
Okay.
those.
I'll see if I can just see those at the output. And in the meantime, info everywhere. Once we see them appear. We're getting there. Can you speak about single-click remediation plans, automation capabilities across cloud? Are they cloud native in AWS being leveraged while being triggered in ASC? Great question. So, unfortunately, I cannot share too much about what's under NDA in the public webinars. If you're in the private preview community, then feel free to reach out, and we'd love to discuss exactly what our plans for the future are. We currently provide those remediation scripts through the portal. We're definitely exploring additional options into deploying those faster into the other cloud, while perhaps leveraging some native tools. But I'd love to continue that conversation if you'd like, the person who wrote that. Are you working on the update to ISO? Are you referring to ISO for Azure? If you are, please type in the chat. because we don't have that available yet for AWS. If you're referring to AWS, then either is in our roadmap. Okay, I think we saw all the questions here. So thank you so much for posting those and for being so patient with me and with Paul everywhere while they appeared. So if you haven't onboarded yet into Security Center and would like to, you're welcome to visit this link here and see how you can do that. And please feel free to copy my email, email me directly, and I'd love to continue this conversation with you about your organizational needs and your feedback.
Thank you so much, Or, for being our guest today and for an excellent presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answer questions. At the same time, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/securitycommunity. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. Thank you and see you next time. Goodbye.